contend with. You're right there, Tomo.
Yes, yeah.
Right, there being no apologies. Confirmation of previous minutes, I'll do those as 3 individuals. Is that correct, Colin?
Yes, please.
Yep. Someone prepared to move? Councillor Scarman, Councillor Moore. All those in favour? Against? That's for the first one. The second one, the minutes of the ordinary meeting, Tuesday the 7th of April. Someone prepared to move? Councillor Scarman.
Just Dennis, just a
Sorry.
alteration to the motion. Paul has just pointed out that there should be a special meeting, not an ordinary meeting, the second one.
Okay, so that's a special meeting.
And the third one, yeah.
So,
Also specials, yeah.
Well, just hang on with the third one because I looked for it last night on the extranet and it wasn't there.
well, hang on, we're only to the second one yet.
Yeah, well, don't do the third one because it's not there.
Hang on. Is someone Sue move the second one? Seconded by Councillor Webb. Any questions on that one? If not, all in favour? Against? That is carried. Now, number 3, you've got a problem, Ben?
Well, I looked on the extranet last night for those minutes to transfer over to my Adobe and they weren't there. So
Yeah,
they haven't, but they're within inside their 5 days. The 5th day is not till today, but they just weren't available. So I don't, if anyone else has read them, I'd be surprised.
Yeah, I have.
Where are they?
They were on the internet. I read them at 1 o'clock this morning.
Dennis, Paul has just told me that they are definitely on the Electronet. Whereabouts?
When did they go to the Electronet?
Friday.
They weren't there last night. I looked.
They were Friday. They were there.
Hey, they weren't. They weren't there last night.
Colin, I had a look this morning. I couldn't find them either.
Hang on, just 1 minute, Mr. Mayor. Paul
Yep.
has just given me some information. So whereabouts in the Electronet? They're under the agenda and minutes in the Electronet, and they're also on the website.
Obviously, they're there somewhere.
Mm.
The latest minutes I have is the 7th of April. I'm looking at
Yeah,
it now.
you haven't got the 16th either, have you, Ian?
No. Got the
No, I
agenda
don't
there,
have
but not,
them. I can't find them on. I can't find them in their normal place on the Electronet.
Yeah,
So-
no, they're not in the normal place on the Electronet, so they're
They're
not there.
obviously hiding.
We must be looking at 2 different Electronet. Paul has can see them. That's the only thing. We're just going to check something now. Hang on, 2 secs.
I'm a bit slow. What are we looking for?
The third lot of confirmation of previous minutes on the
Yeah.
16th of April.
Well, Paul is showing me something now that's the Electronet under agendas and minutes, and it's got a date there. You've got April the 21st, where you've got all the agenda items for this meeting. Then the next line down should say April the 16th, special meeting.
Agenda only.
Agenda
It's the agenda only. It's got no minutes there at all.
Hang on,
I can snap the screen and send it to you if you
No,
like.
I think we're right now. Paul is reading the agenda as the minutes. Hang on, 2 seconds. Yeah, hang on. They're on there, but they're hidden.
They're hidden.
Well, that means they're not read.
I know.
So
I know. Okay, we'll have to do it at the next meeting.
Yes, exactly.
Yep. Okay.
Exactly then.
All right, so number 3, we've just not there. So that's all
They're
right.
on the website, you can find them there. But if you haven't seen them, it's probably you can't really even read them. Let them go to the next meeting.
All right. Thank
Find
you.
out why. We've just changed over the websites to a new platform from Unity to Squiz, and that happened over the week, Friday and the weekend. So whether that's just done something to it, we can see bits from our end, but you can't see them. All right. All right. Leave that one out, please, Mr. Mayor.
Righto, thank you. So the rest have all been moved and seconded and voted on. All good?
Hang on.
Yep.
Wait, Paul. Can you just wait till Paula gets back to her seat, Dennis? Hang on.
Yep. I can't see where she is.
Hang on. She'll log herself on when she's ready. Just show them your face, Paula.
No, she's right. I'll believe you.
There she is, right?
Oh, beautiful.
She's in the Bahamas now.
Yeah, and that's where you get the upset on the screen, like it's not clear.
She's off.
Right. Business arising from those minutes, please. Nothing. Right, public question time. It's a little bit difficult in this situation. Questions on notice there is nil. Questions without notice, please. No?
I have a couple. And are we ready for them?
Yes.
A question to Peter or Colin. I got a letter that I was copied in on in relation to the new seal in Spalding and where it's going to finish, because after talking to the people that live in that house, there seems to be some confusion, because I thought it was finishing where they finished the preparation work. They've now been told by Peter, as it's been relayed to me, that it's actually going to the corner and it's going to be sealed over an area that's not prepared. So are we doing more work there? What's happening? And that, so Peter or Colin might better answer that. It was a letter from James Matters that I was sent.
Peter, you take that, please.
Yes, happy to respond to that. You want the video on?
Yep, please.
Yep.
Yeah, so Councillor Brown had contacted me about that, indicated they were keen to have at least to the end of that corner and probably up around the corner to another driveway that's on the northern side of their block, sealed. The original seal, from my recollection, that we presented to council was to the garages, which is the area we prepared. Now, in talking to Shaker about an extension of that seal to the corner to enable a bit more thorough, if you like, seal to the property. He's confident that the construction of the road, in a time that during his time here this time around, is satisfactory to take a seal for probably the amount of work it's going to get. So we're satisfied that we could do a seal on that extra, that's probably about 30, 40 metres up to the corner, and prepared to do that length.
Well, I think there's significant problems with that, but just with the way the water and that travels in that area, and to not prepare the road for the water to cross with some sort of drain would be, or a culvert or something. I mean, look, the idea that you'd put seal over an unprepared piece of road, to me, doesn't sound like a very sound practice to me. And look, I raised this with Colin yesterday. My concern with the seals right throughout the council area now, the re-seals and the new seals, is that it's getting too cold, and we'll end up in the same situation we did in 2000 and I think it was 2011, or it might have been 2012, where we had a significant failure with the seal on the Andrews Road. And I mean, you only got to go and look at it. The stone was peeling off it for a couple of years, and we'll pay a price for that in the fact that we'll be doing that road long before we should have had to redo it again, because it just wasn't a very good job, because the weather's now turned too cold to get successful bonding of the stone. Well, that was our experience then, and we've always done it earlier than this.
Mr. Mayor, can I comment on that?
Yes, Colin, please.
Ben, yeah, I followed that up yesterday afternoon for you through Peter and Borrell. There's actually in the email last night, there's a email response from Borrell. Hopefully everyone's seen that, about they believe that the conditions are not to that cold level yet. It has to be below, I think it was 15 or something like that. So they've said it's still okay to do the work.
Well, I spoke with Colin yesterday, and I think we've probably got more to lose than gain by not doing the reseals. But I think in the future, I would like to see these done before the Christmas break, because as long as I've been here, I think we've been running into problems with the temperature and all that, doing it this time of year. So I think we've got to rethink when we do them. As far as the one in Spalding, well, I don't know the situation, but if the staff have inspected the road and they can do it, obviously it's not going to be a high traffic road. It's going past a driveway by the sound of it. Maybe whether it should be done or not, I don't know, but I think I've got to trust the staff decision on that one. Ian?
Yeah, just, I thought it'll probably come down to the day. If the temperature's right for the day, they'll proceed. If it's not right, they probably shouldn't proceed, because you just end up with problems.
Well, I think they're the experts as far as laying it is concerned. I think, well, we've just got to trust them, I suppose. That's all we can do. I know they probably won't lay if it's raining or anything like that. So, and if they do it in adverse conditions, well, I think we've probably got some comeback to them to say, well, the conditions weren't that good when you did the work. Why are we paying the extra? Or if we need to do something different, we shouldn't be actually paying for it.
Well, that certainly wasn't the, hang on, yeah, now that certainly wasn't the case with the Andrews Road. We did go back to them and they fixed a section of about 50 or 60 metres by a tree, and they didn't repair any other. And I mean, you only got to drive down it now to see how bad it was, because there's a huge amount of the stone missing from the surface. So I don't actually see how they can, how you would expect. I know they just haven't in the past honoured any sort of warranty, and I think it's ratepayers' money we're spending, and we've had failures before. Why would we head down that path again?
Councillor Scarman?
2011 is 9 years ago. I'm sure Boral have learnt a lot. Hopefully in those 9 years, the outcome would be different.
All right, any further comments?
Well, just that the process is the same, so I don't know that anything's different at all.
Peter?
So what may be different is the binder. I obviously can't comment on the on 2012 or whenever it was. The binder, there are different binders that are used in the bitumen. The C170 that is proposed to be used this year, and we've used the last few years, is good to down to 15 degrees, and I expect there's some margin of safety within that. They expect to have the works done within a week or so, and we are able to project out and see what the weather's like within that period of time. So I would be confident to proceed with the seals, and that would be my advice, that we proceed with the seals.
Thanks, Peter. Any further questions? All right, Councillor Brown, you had another question?
No, basically that was it. It was about the road by in Spalding and the reseals. They were the two questions I had.
So you're happy with the one of matters to be put on the, obviously you're not all that happy, but I think it'll be okay.
No, it'll be a complete failure, and it'll be an embarrassment to council. That's what it'll be.
All that,
it'll be an absolutely ridiculous thing to do, to seal a road on an unprepared surface. And I mean, I don't think Shaker would have much more experience than I have, and I know it wouldn't work.
Oh, obviously there's a difference of opinion there. So what do you want to do? Just go to the end of the prepared work? Peter, you got a comment, please? We
had originally prepared it down to the effectively to the garage to seal to that extent. Ideally, that is all you do.
I think Councillor Scarman.
If it's not properly prepared, are Boral still going to lay?
Peter.
A fair question here. Look, we haven't spoken to Boral about that, and it would be a bit of an inspection on site if we were going to proceed with that, an inspection on site and some clarification as to whether it's acceptable or not.
I'd just make the further point. I'm just trying to get a green dot. I just make the further point that if it was successful to seal over unprepared work, why would we spend all the money we do preparing work? It's just a simple position. We spend a significant amount of money if you have a look at the budgets for doing these preparations, and then we go and seal a section without preparing it. Doesn't seem like very much. It doesn't seem very sensible to me.
Councillor Scarman.
With that in mind, is it worth thinking or getting Boral to give the opinion whether it's worth doing or not doing, and let it be their call?
Well, I think what's the distance again, Ben? 30, how many metres?
Oh, look, roughly it'd be, look, I mean, I haven't measured it, but Peter had a measurement of 40. I'll accept that. I don't know. It'd be roughly about that. I would have thought that to the corner. Where the problem really came up is the preparation goes to just before the shed. They've got to go off the seal to turn into their shed. I mean, if the preparation had gone basically to the other side of the shed, there wouldn't have been an issue. I mean, I just can't believe that the scope of works was done that finished short of the entrance to the shed. It just seems to be a ridiculous, like either it was a guesstimate that wasn't done properly or what. But yeah, I mean, I wished it had been raised with me why the contractor was there, but they were sort of gone before I got to look at it.
All right, well, we're not going far here, so I think at this stage we'll leave it to staff, to Peter, and if he's talking with Boral, if we can come to a conclusion that it's suitable to put a seal on, do it, and if it's not, we'll leave it. How does that sound?
Well, it'll be an embarrassment to council if they go ahead and seal an unprepared surface. That's what it'll be.
I'm not going to die on a ditch over 40 metres of road. If it can be done successfully, I think it should be done. Anyway, I think Peter's probably got enough there, so you happy with that, Peter?
Sure.
Okay. All right.
We've lost Kathy off the main screen.
I haven't.
Yeah,
You
I
haven't,
have.
no, but the rest of us on iPads have.
I have.
We've got Tomo on screen.
Oh, yes, she's
Yeah.
back. She's back.
Not on mine. I got Tomo.
Okay. So they're going to have to close at 4. I'm going to have to close their thing so they can come back in.
Tomo's going to have to shut his camera off.
Through Mr. Mayor,
Yep.
can I just make a comment?
Yes, Colin, please.
When the managers speak, you need, and you're not required again, turn your camera off. But as soon as the 9th person comes back on, you put your camera back on again. All right, it's just to get the 9 elected members promoted onto that iPad screen. This is just a little bit of messy stuff we have to do. But the managers, please leave their videos on so the mayor can see you if you want to speak. That's all.
The thing is, if it's really only necessary, I can see all of you. It's really when we're going to vote that we want just the 9 on there. So it's going to be a few teething problems. You can slide across and see them, Ben.
Yes, look, I didn't see Peter because I didn't slide across. So all the talking Peter did never knocked Kathy off. Something's happened now that's knocked Kathy off.
Is Kathy
So
back on?
Yeah, she's back.
Yeah.
Well, I've got Colin. I've still got Colin on the iPad. So Colin needs
I'm the same there, Ben. I've only got Colin.
Yeah, so it must be that it's not picking up the same for everybody. For some reason, it's doing
No,
Now
now
we've got David.
I've got David. Kathy must have dropped her camera out or something.
No, she
Kathy
hasn't.
needs to come
Has-
back in.
There we are.
There we
There
are.
you
Got
are.
Kathy back now.
Hey, bloody marvellous.
That was Sam Telfer's fault. He sent me a message.
Well, you don't have to
Everyone
go,
message.
Nick.
All right, I think we've just got to, things are not going to work perfectly. So if someone just drops off the screen for a while, it's not going to matter unless we are voting. So I think just have to deal with it the best we can. We can all hear each other, so that's the main thing.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, you still wanted to see all the managers so you could see if they wanted to speak, but didn't you?
Yes, I do.
So
Yes.
you need to, managers need to leave your cameras on so the mayor can see you.
That's right. That's right.
All right, we'll battle on. Motions on notice there is nil. Motions without notice, please. No motions without notice. Correspondence. Councillor Webb.
I actually noticed that item IEM 19937, road closing in Gladstone. What is that pertaining to?
Peter or Colin, help me with that one, please. In the correspondence.
Yeah,
What?
Just
What's the
explain
number
it again, please.
item IEM 19937, road closing in Gladstone, prelim plan 19/0048, refer 18344.
Sounds like you, Peter, does it? Gabby.
Yeah.
Gabby.
Sorry. I might just have to look that one up. So can I answer that when I start my report or at the end of my report? So I'm just looking it up on the screen. What was the number again, Kathy?
19937.
Okay.
Councillor Pollard.
Yeah, in the correspondence, there's a final notice from the EPA marked as outstanding. Can somebody tell me what that's all about? Final notices usually need to be dealt with fairly quickly.
Peter.
Yeah, it was regarding some report, just it's standard reporting. We don't usually get down to the level of final notice, but been a bit going on. So we ended up with a final notice there. It's since been attended to.
Now, we seem to have a problem. Kathy has disappeared.
Again, well, she's
I dare say she got another message.
Oh, well, it shouldn't be happening, because if she has disappeared, we have to record her as leaving the meeting, Colin.
That's right. And
Yeah, definitely.
like, I don't know whether she hasn't left the meeting, but
Oh, well, officially she has. If we can't
Yeah.
see that she has left the meeting.
she needs to go into her settings and turn notifications off.
Well, don't look at them.
Yeah, the information we got from legal advice the other day, as soon as your face doesn't appear on the screen, we have to record you as left the meeting.
Yeah, no, look, I understand that. No, that's what yeah, it's just a glitch. She needs to set the settings right in her iPad.
Yeah, okay.
All right, council committees. Nothing else on correspondence, sorry. Councillor Scarman, sorry.
Wasn't on correspondence, it was more for Kathy. Is it worth getting Anna to give Kathy a ring to sort out whatever issue she's having?
Yep, Paul is getting Anna now to ring Kathy.
Gabby, comment please.
Just going back to the query that Kathy had, that road closure is a road that we're selling to Peter Lyons. So that's just some documentation regarding that one.
Yeah. Sorry, all. The entire lot just dropped out.
Gabby, I'm not sure if Kathy heard your answer. Can you repeat that, please?
Kathy, the correspondence that you were inquiring about, that was a road closure that we're selling a piece of road to Peter Lyons.
Okay.
I think that was a decision to cancel some time ago, wasn't it, Gabby?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
Short-term memory loss. Also, in correspondence, there seem to be some double ups. Items 17394 and 395, and also 405 and 406. They read exactly the same.
Okay, we'll take that on board.
Councillor Pollard.
Yeah, just on that correspondence report, excuse me, and I think I've mentioned this before, it would be much handier if that was produced in date order. I mean, you've got it in staff member order at the moment, so it's obviously can be sorted. But the key thing in that is to look at stuff that is way out of date and that it's not being handled. That's why we asked for it in the first place some years ago. So could the technical people have a look at putting that into date order from the oldest first, please?
We'll have a look at it.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Right, council committees, no. Operational services report. Someone like to move, receive that, please. Councillor Scarman, Councillor Webb, all those in favour? Against? That is carried. Thanks, Gabby.
Thank you. The first item is from the Yakka Community Development Association, and they have a proposal to erect entrance signs to the township of Yakka. There'll be a sign at the northern entrance and one at the southern entrance, and the structure will consist of 5 large stones with lettering set on each stone. It'll be set back a minimum of 10 metres from the edge of the road. There's a recommendation there for council to approve it, to include it on the asset register and be subject to development approval.
Councillor Brown.
Yeah, I'll move that motion.
Seconded, Councillor Pollard. Any questions of Councillor Brown?
No, I was just voting.
I was waiting for questions. If there's no questions, all those in favour? Against? That is carried. Thank you.
The Ewart Oval would like to put an entrance sign there. There's a copy of the proposal there. So it would be just at the entrance to the Ewart Oval. It's the recommendation there for that one.
Councillor Webb moved. Councillor Moore seconded. Any questions?
No, just want to vote for it.
Were you in a hurry, Councillor Brown?
Oh, I just think we're going to be all day if we don't do something.
All right, all those in favour? Against? That is carried.
DIPTI have come back to us with a report called What We Have Heard report, which is in response to the submission that we put in for the draft phase 2 planning and design code. Councillors will probably remember that we had quite a few things that we wanted changed in the plan. And so we were only notified on the Wednesday before Easter that we had to have a look at this and see whether all the changes that we'd wanted had been done. And we also had to do some scenarios live on the e-planning. And so we had to have it all back by Tuesday, which left us not very much time whatsoever. I think only 4 working days to be able to do that. So we've gone through what they've come back with, and a lot of the things that we wanted changed hadn't been changed. So we had to sort of go through those with our liaison officer and get them changed to what we had asked for in the first place. So it really wasn't very, very well done at all. So hopefully what we've gone back to them with, hopefully that will be, they will make the changes that we had asked. For instance, the township fringe zones where they wouldn't have been able to put any dwellings on less than 40 hectares, I think it was, or 20 hectares. They hadn't changed that, and that would have been fairly detrimental to people that owned land in that township fringe. So the things, the really main things that we want to change, they hadn't done them. So hopefully it sort of hasn't left us with much faith in them at all. They've started, Colin, you might like to talk about how they've started having weekly meetings with Ray Partridge, who is the project director and our liaison officer. Did you want to talk on that, Colin?
Yeah, thank you. This Ray Partridge is a new person in the process, and he's trying to get communications between council and the dip tide back on better grounds they have been. We were concerned, as Gabby said, about these 4 days. I expressed my disappointment with Ray. They're trying to work it through. They will have weekly meetings with us now to talk about our individual council issues. So there is a direct line we can go backwards and forwards now. There is still some issues with dip tides, Gabby outlined. We need to be on top of these, but some of our timelines, they're giving us a very, I call it obscene, because it's, you know, they give you a week and it was like over Easter, which led down to 4 days. So this weekly chats will hopefully fix that process, and we'll get back on a track. But Dip Tide said they're not going away from their timelines. They still say this will happen in July. Thank you.
All right, thanks for that, Colin and Gabby. But I think thanks to the staff for keeping an eye on that. And I think we've probably got to rely on you to keep checking those things. And if you're not happy, if you need some assistance from elected members and council, to please, even if we've got to have another meeting or something like that, just to reinforce what you're trying to do. So keep at them, I think.
The next item.
Yep.
The Nukanu settlement. It's just to let council know that there was an agreement registered on the Indigenous Land Use Agreements Register for Nukanu. So that's just there for council information. The NBN upgrading. Oh, sorry, did someone?
Councillor Pollard.
Yeah,
Oh,
Merv was first.
Councillor Robertson.
He's older than me too.
yeah, Mr. Mayor, does that mean that the Bowling Green agreement can now be finalised?
I don't think so. I don't think so. I don't think it has. I still don't think it's gone to that stage where that can be done. I will double check, but I don't think that means that.
Councillor Pollard.
Mine was pretty much the same, but it's Nukanu. Does that encompass Jamestown? I thought that would be an AGRI agreement.
The Nukanu covers some of the council area.
Yeah, to the west.
Yes.
Northwest,
That's
I
right,
think.
yeah.
Northwest.
Look,
yeah.
there was a realignment. There was a realignment of those boundaries just over 12 months ago. So Spalding actually is now right in the middle, whereas one time we were on the western side. So yeah, I wouldn't be sure exactly where the line goes up around Jamestown.
So it's a fluid boundary then, Ben, is it?
No, look, I think it was adjusted and now it's finalised. But I just, without going and looking at it, I can't tell you exactly where it is. But it was certainly readjusted in a negotiation, and you know, it's brought to some modern lines, which takes some negotiation, I suppose.
All right. Thanks, one, Gabby.
We can send a map out if that's of any help.
Yeah, it might pay to Gabby just to clear things up a bit, please, if you get time.
Certainly. The NBM, they're looking to just upgrade an existing radio network base station in Georgetown, so on the Georgetown Kalunga Road. So that's just for council information. We don't actually do any approvals or anything for that. And then there's the planning progress report and the action list.
All right. Any questions on Gabby's printed report, please? If not, thank you, Gabby.
Thank you.
And we'll move on to Alan. Regulatory services, please, Tomo. Microphone,
Put your
Tomo.
microphone on, Tomo.
Turn your mic on, Tomo.
Poor old Tomo.
It's all right. Now, hear me now?
Yep.
Yeah, can't see you though. You're not looking at the camera.
There's not a lot to look at, but the first item in the report is the Spalding complex. There's been an ongoing problem with some dampness appearing in the just inside of the external walls in the gym and part of the change rooms. We did speak with the builder about that, and he was of the opinion that it was more likely caused by the fill that was placed up against the footing, which I'm not sure if that was totally correct. But anyway, that resulted in us asking Mace Engineering, who designed the footing, to have a look at the dampness and prepare a report for us. So that report is enclosed in my report. But it summarises their report with the 4 recommendations for us to consider to look at the problem and perhaps look at some remedial measures.
All right. Any comments on that, please, Councillor Pollard?
Yeah, my first question is, whose problem is it? Like, and I know when there's 2 groups involved, it'll be difficult to sort out, but I believe the council's one and the builder's the other. Is that right, Tomo?
It appears that way, Leon. I mean, the damp-proof membrane, which is the flexible Forticon plastic membrane, wasn't carried through to the top of the footing. Now, I don't know how that happened, but that's a problem. He claims that he had the membrane carried through to the footing. Our photographs of the pre-pour footing did show the plastic extending to the top of the trench and then laid out over, which is normally then lifted to cover off the face of the footing. But that was trimmed away. So probably that, I'm not sure who trimmed it, but he claims it was there, which I can't confirm or deny that either. And the external base material that was installed, the builder claims that that's more of a problem than the membrane not extending up the face of the footing. So probably a bit of both, Leon, but it's going to be difficult to determine where that line starts and finishes, I think.
Councillor Webb?
Going by photo 6, there is no way that material had gone up to the top of the backfill. So I would say it would be the builder's fault for not having it going right up, because you could always see it. And if it was trimmed back, that's too far down.
Can I make a few comments, Dennis?
Yeah, please put your hands up before you want to talk, please, because we end up talking over each other. Thanks, Ben.
Look, I think people have summed it up reasonably well. I mean, it's difficult to know who cut the Forticon plastic off. The builders, I met there with the builder. The builder has no intention of doing anything there to remedy anything. We can't even get him to fix the leaking skylights. He's been on the roof that many times. I'm sure he hasn't. I'm not surprised if he hasn't worn out his ladder getting up there. And the amount of silicon he's put up there to try and stop the skylights leaking must be costing him a fortune, because he's up there every other week trying to fix them, but he's not achieving much. So there's certainly along the back, the wet soil that's been put there by council is certainly a major contributor. There is potentially not the proper material between the concrete paths around the outside of the building and the slab. It couldn't be identified where you could see it that there was any proper barrier there. So there is some issues there, and but the significant issue that's going to damage the building and the framework, if it's not rectified, is along the back. And a protracted argument with the builder is going to take a long time, and that's not going to fix the building. And I think a good percentage of the fault would lie with the work that council did in that area at the back of the building. That would, and I think that would be Alan's view too, but not for me to talk for Alan.
I mean, Alan,
Probably, if the membrane had been left in place and extended to the top of the footing, as we've mentioned, we probably wouldn't have a problem. But that was the builder's view, and as it stands, it probably is the major contributing factor. But then it's probably what was never considered, I suppose, was the fact that the membrane wasn't there. You would have expected it to have been there, but how it was trimmed off, I've got no idea. But I think the quick fix is to just expose the face of that footing and then let it dry out, and then use the product or the couple of products. But the Gripset range of products are the best. But probably in terms of doing the work, I'd reckon we ought to look at it around about September time, and then open it up and then let it dry out, and then install the damp proofing on the face of the footpath. But the area between the back of the building and the retaining wall, which is the hard stand, that the backfill that Ben was referring to, that probably needs to be assessed by operational services to get the drainage right. There was during the recent rain, or whenever it was in February, there was some photos taken of a lot of water pooling in that area, but it was some 2 or 3 metres from the building.
so Councillor Brown, you're happy with the recommendations as they're printed there?
Oh, look, I think they'll go. I think they'll fix the problem. Like, if a membrane's put in along the back of the slab, that'll fix the problem, and the other stuff that's recommended by the engineer in the report has to be done to comply with the report to fix the problem. So that's what has to be done. So we'll have to do it. It's predominantly, well, it's either the builder or the council that caused the problem. So we've either got to tackle the builder or fix the problem ourselves. And
sorry.
And we haven't been able to deal with the builder very successfully in the past. So we still have, as I said, we've still got problems with the skylights leaking there, and the building was finished in 2016 from memory. So I mean, 4 years and we can't fix a leaking skylight.
Councillor Robertson.
Mr. Mayor, we really don't know how much money we're talking with. So the recommendation is asking for quotes. So I'd like to move the recommendation that has been printed.
Thank you, Councillor Robertson, and seconded Councillor Brown. Any further questions? If not, in a hurry, all those in favour? Against? That is carried. Thank you. Next one, Tomo.
Well, the remainder of the report is just a summary of our activities, but probably the thing we've spent quite a bit of time on has been the requirement to check on all of our food shops and outlets for compliance with the COVID-19 requirements. It's all been very good so far. All of the majority of food shops are offering a takeaway service, including some of the hotels. Several have voluntarily closed until this is all over, but it's been pretty good. We do conduct random inspections, which in some cases it's only a drive-by, but in a couple of shops we popped in just to make sure that they're aware of what the requirements are and their responsibilities. So it's been pretty good so far.
Thanks, Alan. Right, would someone like to move that the report be noted, please? 12.2.2, Councillor Pollard, Councillor Higgins. Any further questions to Alan?
Well, I just want to make a point on noting reports, because it all takes time. We've already received the report, so we've received the report. We did that when we started the thing. We don't need to note. If there's not a decision to be made, we don't actually need to note individual parts of the reports. We've already received them, and that would speed things up with what we're doing. That's the point I'd like to make.
Comment, Colin? Microphone?
Microphone.
Councillor Brown is not wrong, but what we do it for is make sure councillors do acknowledge what is in the report. At times we've had in past years, councillors saying they never knew anything about it. So if we put a recommendation, it be noted that it's an official record that it has been from management to elected members. And that's the only reason it's there for.
That's covered by the fact that the report's in the agenda. It honestly, if it's in the agenda and councillors haven't read it, there's not much more you can do about it.
Councillor Pollard, do you want to comment?
Oh, no, I was just going to say, I think there's some other ways we could speed the meeting up.
Yes. All right. If there's no further questions to Alan, thank you, Alan.
Okay.
We'll move along to regulatory services. No, that's we've just finished. Operational services report. Someone like to move? We receive that, please.
We've done that. We've already done it, haven't we?
No, we haven't been.
Operational services report. Councillor Webb, Councillor Higgins. All those in favour? Against? Right. Thanks, Peter.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the first report there, heavy vehicles NHVR request. It's an unusual one for a Class B3, Class 3 B triple up to 35 metre. I think it's reasonably explanatory. Any questions?
Councillor Moore. Microphone.
I'll move the recommendation.
We got a seconder for that, Councillor Scarman. Just on that, Peter, I thought it was only a 30 metre on the depth tie roads. How are they going to get on from Spalding to where they need to get to with a 36 metre? They got to get depth tie approval first, or what's the go there?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, the permit requests come into both agencies at the same time, so we deal with them individually. It may be that by the time I get back to it, and I've got no way of knowing until I've gone in and processed my bid, it may be that the deputy don't approve it for their roads. But we still have to go through a process. If they do approve it, they've got to know whether council are satisfied with it. So it may be still, even if council do approve it, that the deputy do knock it back.
Councillor Pomeranke.
I just noticed in the report there, it mentions the application was for 36.5 metres, but the recommendation mentions 35 metres. Just explain that.
I think it might be just a misprint. Yeah, it's 36.5 metre vehicle, but it's 35 metre in the recommendation. You're correct.
You got a comment?
Yeah, I think that would be correct.
36.5 metres is the regulated length. There's 30 metres, then it's 36.5.
So, Peter, have they got permits from their other hay shed, Fisher's Trough, into Jamestown for B triples?
I don't believe so. I think this is the first. I think this is the first B triple that I can recall bringing to council, and I certainly haven't approved any others independently.
As you know, I spend a reasonable amount of time in Ballali East, and there's been B triples running from their other hay shed for a considerable amount of time, and their main hay shed is not at Cooltoo Road. It's up further on Fisher's Trough Road. So I'm just a little bit concerned about the whole thing. I don't think they're telling us all of where they're going, because I saw a B triple go out of their other hay shed on Fisher's Trough Road yesterday. with livestock. Councillor Brown?
Look, I've seen these combinations, and they run on basically road train routes. So, I mean, basically, it's the same as it operates the same as a normal A double 36 metre A double. It's the same thing. So, but they get slightly more weight, I think, but it'd be marginal. I don't know that it's that much. I think that the gross weight's the same anyway as a triaxle dolly on a road train. I don't think there's any difference. So, yeah, I'm not dead sure where the problem is, but like it's a 36 and a half metre permit for a hay truck, and we've given out heaps of them.
Yeah, all right. Any further comments? Councillor Higgins?
So I'm wondering, does the recommendation need to change then so that it reads up to 36.5 metres rather than 35 metres it's listed there, and that way we're covered for all eventualities.
Yeah. Fair enough comment. The mover and second are happy with that?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
All right, if there's no further questions, all those in favour? Against? You in favour, Ian, or against?
Favour.
That is carried. That is carried. Thank you. Next one.
Dennis.
Yes.
Yeah, look, and I said we moved operational services report before Gabby's. That's when we moved it. We didn't need to move it again. They're all covered in the same report.
All right, thank you. Peter, next one.
4.3.2 footpaths. I assume there may be some discussions council want to have regarding this report, but I put it there to note.
Well, I received that letter from Mr. Kelly, where the photo was taken in front of his property. I think he took a little bit of offence to that. That is a very wide footpath there, but I think there's a lot happening on our footpaths. Like you go up to the OD route, there's trucks and containers and everything put on the edge of the road there, and I really don't think they should be there. I know there's not foot traffic up there, but I don't think that was what that area was actually designed for, was to park containers and everything on. They're there for a fair length of time. So I think it's probably just disappointing that photo was taken at Mr. Kelly's, but that's what happened. So that's my comments. Anyone else? Councillor Pollard?
Yeah, I thought this was very poorly done. I understand what the object of the exercise was, and that is to stop people parking on footpaths. My understanding is that the $500 and the $500 per hour, we've got nothing to do with that. It's actually a police matter, and I think we should have handled it through the police by asking them to go and at least talk to those people who are parking on the footpath. It's not random people, it's people that do it all the time. Now, I fully understand that footpaths aren't meant for parking cars on, but people do it. The reason they do it, and I see some chatter in here about it, is that the streets are very narrow, and at night they can be cleaned up or hit by cars coming down the road. That's why people park them on the footpaths. I'm specifically talking about the one at the end of my street. But so the idea of putting in there about fines and stuff that we have nothing to do about, I think, is the wrong way to go about it. And we should have used a less sledgehammer approach, which may have had better results. And while we're at the police station, we may well have found out about if there's any results from the vandalism back in January, which we haven't heard anything about. I don't think anybody's followed up.
Colin, you got a comment there, please?
I've continually followed up with the police, probably on a fortnightly basis, and all they keep telling me is they'll get back to us when they get to it.
Have we followed up with the police on this issue?
Yes,
And what do they say?
that's what I just said. They'll get back to me as soon as they can.
Oh, I thought you were talking about the vandalism.
The vandalism, that's what I'm talking about, the vandalism. What are you talking
Okay, we're talking about this issue here with the
footpath?
footpaths, yes. So have we followed that up with the police?
I'll just go to Merv first and then a comment from Peter, please.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I received a letter from Mr. Kelly as well regarding that, and I can understand his concern about it all. My comment is that some of our footpaths are not in very good state at all, and it might be better to park our cars on the footpath and let people walk on the road, which they're doing at the moment because of the condition of our footpaths. So I don't think we want to be heavy-handed and going around finding people.
Peter?
So the intent has never been to actually fine people, but to raise awareness that that parking on the footpath is an illegal activity. There's an intent to raise the level of awareness within the community through the articles. I do note, as Councillor Pollard has mentioned, might be a sledgehammer approach, and apologise if that's offended anybody. But no, certainly we don't have the power to go out and find people. I've had a view that if we make people aware that that it's not an acceptable activity under the law, that may stimulate people to assist their neighbours to park in different places by perhaps pointing out to them that it's not an appropriate way of parking if it's bothering people.
Okay, thanks, Peter. Councillor Robertson?
Mr. Mayor, this issue happened about 12 or 15 years ago when a council staff member was going around slipping a bit of paper under the wiper of windscreens, advising people that if they kept doing it, they'd be fined. So it's sort of rekindled itself again now.
Yep. All right, thanks for that, Councillor Robertson. All right, moving forward, any comments? No, well, contrary to Councillor Brown, I'll ask that report be noted, please. Someone like to move that? Councillor Pollard, Councillor Scarman. All those in favour? Against? That is carried. Thank you. Next one, Peter.
Pine Creek Bridge Options Report, got the recommendations there. Probably if I could just speak a little bit to that. And the third recommendation. So what I'm saying in that report is that we don't know the condition of the infrastructure that's proposed to be reused, if this is an option the council want to proceed with at this stage, and to get a better idea of the likely remaining life in that infrastructure that's proposed to be reused would cost around $31,900. We don't have to do that. The council is satisfied that if this is an option, that we just take a punt, that we might get 50 years out of it, or we might get 15.
Councillor Higgins.
As I was reading the report, I did notice that we didn't have a sense of the life, and I guess my question is that going to make a difference to the decision we make? Like I am not sure that I'm happy to approve option 3 at this stage without knowing if the bridge has got 50 years. Like 50 years would be great, but if it's 15, should we look at, say, the Ford without demolishing the bridge as an option? Because if it's only 15 years, then it doesn't seem to me to be viable, like a good use of the money. Question.
Councillor Robertson, sorry, yeah, thanks, Councillor Higgins. Councillor Robertson.
Mr. Mayor, I believe that we should be looking at option 5A, putting in culverts, etc. And why I say that if you go on the Stonehut to Cowderry Road, that happened a number of years ago, and that causeway is working well. I believe that if we went to 5A, still leave the bridge there, and there's a number of bridges that are not used that are still left around. You got them at Rhinee and Meriton, just two examples where the bridges are still left there. And also, it would be better for machinery to go through. It would be possibly a little bit wider. So my personal opinion is that we should go for 5A.
I think you're correct, Councillor Higgins. Before we decide on the 31,900, we've got to get whether that is definitely the preferred option or whether we go to, as Councillor Robertson said. Councillor Pollard. Councillor Pollard?
Yeah, just having a blank. In all of those plans, Peter, where are they going to send the traffic during construction or maintenance?
Well, that would be to be determined, but there is an existing bypass. A number of I think probably all of the options other than the floodway would require substantial use of the bridge and demolition of it, or components of it. So you wouldn't be able to use the bridge for any traffic for most of those options. So we have the bypass, the detour, operating at the moment for heavy vehicles, and it's likely that detour would be operating for all traffic during any construction period.
There's the one thing like when they did the bridge on the Highway 1 over Crystal Brook, they built a little thing through the creek as a bypass, and that worked pretty successful. And I noticed in all the reports that it didn't have that that part of it costed to do a bypass through the creek. But I'm with Merv and Denise. It really makes no sense to look after that bridge. It's had its share of problems over the years, and it would be better just to scrap it and leave it there and put a set of culverts in it.
Further comments, please? Councillor Pomeranke.
I've got major concerns with the whole report. It doesn't seem to be very well done at all. I mean, just pointing out a fact, like Appendix G has the summarise of the scores. In the table, they got scores for fitness for purpose. But fitness for purpose isn't actually addressed in the report anywhere. Where are the scores actually coming from for that area? It's not even mentioned. And the scores in the appendix doesn't even agree with the scores given through the report in a number of areas. And just on the scores, some scores seem to be ranked, options are ranked. Then in other areas, they're actually given scores where they may have equal 5. And so you got apples and oranges, and you're just coming up with worthless scores in the end. And looking at the estimates in one of the appendix, and I find there's issues in there. There's like spray seals. They got the cost of $70 a square metre, where in a report coming up later, it's mentioned $6.70 in doing seals in another area. It's just way off the mark. Line marking, one option had $32.40 a metre and another one had $65 a metre. It's fairly inconsistent. Same in line marking option 1 and option 5. One had 370 metres in the option 5 had 150, which I thought there'd be similar lengths, and It's just a lot of problems, and I'm just wondering where have other errors been made in the report?
Thanks, Ian. There's probably some very good knowledge there. Councillor Webb first, please, and then Councillor Robertson. Microphone, please.
Sorry about that. In reading through this the first time and then reading the extras that we received afterwards, there was nothing until the very end that had anything about the weight rating for the bridge at the various stages. So it's not a complete report.
Sorry, Councillor Robertson, I think it was up next.
Mr Mayor, I've lost Councillor Brown and Councillor Webb, and I've got Peter and David on the screen. What's gone wrong there?
Just don't worry about it for the time move. It's just in general discussion so that I can see the managers when they're talking. If you slide across, they'll be there somewhere. Slide your screen across. Sorry. Right, further comments, please. Peter, you want to respond?
Probably a little bit difficult to, without going back into that and being able to consider the questions that Councillor Pomeranke raises, but take note of those queries. The rates, it may be again, it's what's the full rate that's being considered? Is it a rate for the seal and construction of the road as well, or just seal? Yeah, hard to comment beyond that.
Councillor Brown.
Look, my comment, I mean, I've read the report and there is a lot of conflict in the report. I accept that, and I think Ian's probably got more knowledge on them than I have, but I mean, there's parts of the report that actually say the abutments and the piers are in good condition, but then we want to spend $30,000 looking at their good condition. But my main worry with this whole thing is if this motion's moved as it is, most of these funding things are 50-50. We have not got $1.5 million in our budgets and the capacity to put it in our forward budgets to do this work. And my approach to doing this would be that we would have to approach, and it can only be approached as the road was done under a special local roads program. And we've done enough preliminary work now to put these options forward as an SLR. And the neighbouring council supporting our application that this, I mean, the whole road was done on a special local roads project, and the bridge was utilised. Now, it wasn't that long ago. Obviously, the assessment of the bridge at the time was perhaps flawed in that it was allowing B doubles, HML B doubles to go over it at the time or shortly afterwards. And it certainly was allowing general mass limit semis when it was done. So if the funding doesn't come through from SLR, I really don't see our capacity to spend $3 million on a floodway in that bridge, or 1.5 million over the next couple of years. We've got far too many other priorities in our budgets. So if it went forward in this form, I believe it commits council to putting $1.5 million in it. And I just don't think we've got it in our budget to do it. But David might want to comment on that.
Right. Any comments, David, Peter, Colin? David first, perhaps, if you're there. Or... No, we'll go to Peter.
Okay. The recommendation 2 talks about future capital programs, and not necessarily the next 12 months. We're conscious that at the moment there are the federal government, state government are looking to create financial impetus into the community through grant funding that is perhaps considered to be a little different to what it's been in the past. So there may be opportunities arise, and one of those is discussed in the infrastructure report. And it's a matter of does council want to position itself to be in a spot to be able to take advantage of funding that may come out of left field, or defer a decision on it till later. I have concerns about the SLRB funding. Certainly, if you're going for a bridge, you wouldn't get any funding for the SLRP. So the only way you'd get funding out of that program is with the floodway, which is a viable option. So there's a lot to consider in whichever way council moves forward, and I appreciate it's not an easy determination.
David, you got a comment, please?
Sure, I'll try. So all of the options are considerable funds. Like our normal budgets don't allow us to just pop $1 million projects or multi-million dollar projects in the budget. So the only way that gets handled is through either major grant funding or loan funding. End of story, really.
Councillor Brown.
Look,
Councillor Higgins.
my only other comment on that, if this motion goes forward, all the stimulus money we've seen in the past has clearly said it can't be for stuff that you have programmed to do yourselves. If this motion goes forward, this is work we program to do ourselves, and it would disqualify us from applying stimulus money to it, in my view. James might want to comment on that, because he talks about the guidelines on a lot of these grant programs, but certainly the 2 rounds of stimulus so far have been for work for local contractors predominantly, that aren't part of your normal works, which is, I mean, the government isn't interested in just subsidising our normal works, and that's fair enough. They shouldn't be.
I'll go to James and then Councillor Higgins.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just in response to Councillor Brown, I guess all I can say is that is often the case. I comment quite regularly. I'll never second guess actions of a state or federal government as to how funding may be distributed, but often some of this funding is for projects which probably wouldn't be able to be done otherwise. I guess the devil's in the detail when this stuff comes out. I know that's a bit of a fence-sitting answer, but it's very difficult to determine. That's all. So sorry about that. There is merit. There is merit.
Councillor Higgins.
I thought in my reading, and maybe it's in the next part of Peter's report, but there was $2.5 million towards bridge work coming from the federal government, or something that we could apply for. Is that correct, Peter? I think that was where I was positioning my thinking. And I wondered also if that money is there, which I thought I'd read about, whether it could be used for the floodway, or does it have to be a bridge? So there are some double layers here for me.
Yeah, so to respond to that, there's a fair bit of ambiguity around the request for projects that came from the federal government. It was aligned with existing federal government programs. So the Bridges Renewal Program, for example, is a federal government program which they were indicating through the correspondence we had that those programs are the ones where they'd be looking to fund projects. That being the case, their correspondence also indicated that whilst they normally work on the basis of 50-50, to do a little bit of blue sky dreaming and come up with some kind of a, at least put in projects, identify what they might be, to start a conversation with federal government on what level of funding might be achievable for the project. So yes, it's in the infrastructure report to talk about that. We have put in what I would suggest is really just a placeholder to say, look, we're interested in having some discussions about a couple of projects that we may be in a position to progress, but subject to a whole range of things being determined by council.
So, thanks, Peter. Just going forward, if as a council we come up with our preferred plan for the Pine Creek, whether it's the bridge, the culvert or whatever it is, and then can we work on funding options then, once we have got what our preferred option is as a council? Is that any way forward? Councillor Brown?
Can I suggest we move recommendation 1? Now I'm reading from the councillors that have spoken that option 3 is not their preferred option, and option 5A is the preferred option.
No.
And I think we could make the decision to receive the report, and if 5A is the preferred option, that we explore 5A further, but not make any commitment. Like if we put it into, if we move that motion there, in my view, we're up for 50% of the funding, which we haven't got in the budget at the moment, or in our long-term financial plan.
Councillor Higgins.
For everybody's information, for me, 3 or 5A are worth looking at. I haven't made a hard and fast decision about either, because I think that there are merits to both. With the final width of the bridge at option 3, at 7 point, whatever it was, I worked it out. It was a nice wide width for farmers anyway, which is the conversation to make it fit for purpose in terms of the people I know who use that bridge a lot. But the floodway would be equally good for that particular group that I'm thinking about at the moment, and probably for everybody. So I don't have a preferred option at this stage. I wonder, is there a way to investigate both in terms of federal and state funding to see just what we would be up for in the long run? Is that a possibility in terms of this conversation?
I'll just go to Councillor Higgins. Councillor Scarman, please. Sorry.
Yeah, obviously you're not seeing me overly well. My internet is fairly limited. I've had my hand up for quite some time. Probably the discussion has gone past my question, but is it possible to list this project as a shovel-ready project and await appropriate funding and see what funding turns up as to whether we go with, there's obviously 2 options that are looking as being preferred, and they are 3 and 5A. Is it something that the options of funding might decide which way we go?
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Scarman. Yeah, I'm of the opinion that we need to define what council's preferred option is and then work with funding. I don't know what you think of that idea, Colin or Peter. David? No comment. Peter, perhaps first, then Ben.
I think council needs to have a position to be able to progress with what funding might become available. If we retain too many options, then it just becomes a bit confusing to move forward. That's just my thinking.
Yeah, thanks. Councillor Brown?
Look, my only comment, and it might not be right anyway, but if you were looking at something down the track where the Commonwealth is looking at doing some serious stimulus, they might only be interested in, say, option 1, a complete renewal. you know, like it's unlikely that the Commonwealth's going to chuck significant money at something potentially only a 15-year lifespan, like Infrastructure Australia and stuff like that. They would not like to look at something with potentially only a 15-year life and chucking money at it. They would look at a whole lot bigger picture and a whole lot longer time frame. So, I mean, it is all dependent. What option we go with is dependent on what funding sources become available. But I think clearly everyone understands that we as a council don't have the 50% commitment that this motion basically locks us into.
Councillor Scarman. Yeah, go Sue.
I prefer the bridge option. Yep. I prefer the bridge option, as a floodway seems like a step backwards. We've already got a bridge there. To go back to a floodway, it seems like we're losing an asset that is already there.
Councillor Robertson, then Councillor Pollard.
Mr. Mayor, I wouldn't go for option 3 and using the main structure of the old bridge. We don't know its lifespan. As I said earlier, they put in a floodway on the Stone Hut to Cowderry Road, which is working well. That replaced the bridge. The culverts they put in here are quite large culverts for this proposed option, and I believe that would be the way to go. Put in the culverts. If it is a major flood, it goes over the top, but that would be only very, very occasionally happening.
Councillor Pollard.
Yeah, without knowing what the reusable infrastructure is like, I think and we could find that out, but at this point in time we don't know. So to me, it's a bit dodgy. It only leaves 1 and 5A to me.
All right, we've had a fair bit of discussion. Is anyone prepared to move anything as regarding an option? Councillor Robertson.
Mr. Mayor, I'll move option 1, that council receive the options report for the Pine Creek Bridge.
I'll second that.
Second to Councillor Brown. All those in favour? Against? That is carried. Any further motion? Councillor Robertson, sorry.
Mr. Mayor, I will move that council's preferred option for the Pine Creek Bridge is going with 5A.
Thank you. Seconded Councillor Pollard. Got that, Colin?
Council preferred option is 5A.
Yep. And perhaps should there be something or another dot point that council staff investigate funding options for that option in the same motion, or a separate one?
It's there.
Councillor Pomeranke.
Just to be clear, that was stating it as preferred but not approved. Is that correct?
It's preferred, that's all.
That's what we said.
Yep.
So other options could still be approved in the future once further investigations are taking place.
I think, Councillor Pomeranke, what I'd like here is we need some direction for staff to work on. And if we've got our preferred option, it's not our only option, but that's our preferred option, then we've got something to work with, or staff have got something to work with. As Councillor Brown said, we're not going to commit ourselves to $1.5 million, which we probably can't do. But if we've got a preferred option, Peter or whoever can go to the agency to say, look, this is our preferred option, what are we up for? And then it's all got to come back to council for final approval.
Yes, I'm happy with that, and because it opens up the option still to go back to option 1 if funding is available.
Well, in an ideal world, if there was plenty of money out there, I'd build the new bridge and it'd be there for 100+ years very successfully, but I just don't think the money's going to come. Councillor Higgins, you had a comment?
Yeah, I wondered whether by saying this is our preferred option, that actually indicates we are shovel ready and therefore are now seriously looking at funding. And that would then negate recommendation 3 that we go and look further, or does the council want to look further into the viability of the current structures, like the pillars, etc.? So that's my question.
All along, the head walls have been an issue all the way along. I think I've got that correct. That's what all the cabling, a lot of stuff there is holding up now. So Peter or anyone else with a lot more knowledge than me about that, please.
Certainly, yeah, the buttresses have been problematic. More about the way that the deck sits on the buttresses than the condition of the buttresses themselves. As the girders are slid across, and there's been efforts there to pull the actual bridge deck back. That's my understanding. Could be wrong, but that's my understanding. But again, you've got the piers, the base of the piers, columns into the water. We don't know what the condition of those is.
All right, any further questions? This is a pretty important vote, so I'll ask managers to turn their cameras off so that I can see the 9 elected members clearly. All right, so
I've still got Alan.
Still got Tomo there.
Go away, Tomo.
Just press your mute.
Didn't
Keep
want to look
your
at
camera,
that, Tomo.
Tomo. Councillor Higgins.
I'm just wondering, can we hear back from Paula, please, exactly what it is that we are now considering? Because I'm just wanting to be really clear. I haven't written it down, and so I'd like to hear it back, please.
Paula, if you can read it out, please, or Colin.
Colin.
Yep.
Right. What we've got down at this stage is the council preferred option is 5A, and staff investigate funding options.
Right. Thanks. Clear with that?
Thank you.
All right. Okay, I'll put that. All those in favour? Against? That is carried. Thank you. Now, staff, you can put your cameras back on, please. Right, Tomo, we're still looking at your keyboard. Right, good. All right, thanks for that, councillors. It was a pretty difficult and hard decision. I think we'd all love to have that piece of infrastructure fixed in some way. So hopefully this gives us a way forward. All right, next one, Peter.
Jamestown Stormwater Management Plan. Again, the plan is obviously a separate document to the report here. It was made available to council. Put the recommendation. Are there any questions?
Yep, Councillor Pollard.
Yeah, does this commit us to any of that plan?
This commits us to consultation with the community on the content of the plan, for the community to come back, make their comments known to council. That would a further report would come back to council with any proposed amendment to the report. Then,
Councillor Robertson.
Okay.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Pollard.
So the thing is, you know, I consider it to be a fair bit of fairy story. I don't think that there are some things in there that are worth following up, but there are others that are just not worth following up. Somewhere along the line, they've got some bad information that they've created this report on. I think it's a major overkill in a lot of cases, and I wouldn't like to see us to be committed to the whole plan at all, or even parts of it.
Councillor Robertson.
Mr Mayor, I'll move the recommendation that Council accept the draft Jamestown Stormwater Water Management Plan for community consultation.
Thank you. Seconded, Councillor Moore.
Yep.
I think the parties here, it goes for community consultation, and if we get back similar issues like Councillor Pollard has said, well, that's when we work on it and delete or whatever we want to do out of there if they're not happy with it.
Yep.
Any further questions? Councillor Higgins.
More a comment. The way I read the report is that they've graded their recommendations from most important to least important, and I would have hoped or assumed that that was the way it was going to be actioned if after consultation or through consultation. So, yeah, I get that there's lots in it that is needing lots of money, and I was going to say pie in the sky really, but I just wonder whether we sort of in consultation, the community understands the gradations of importance, please.
I envisage we'll have to have a public meeting, sorry Peter, with this consultation, and I think that's where we can explain the pros and cons and trips and traps with this report. Peter, do you want to comment, please?
Yes. There any projects that are recommended out of the report for funding will come through council in the budget process. So council, at the end of the day, council are able to determine whether they want to proceed with particular works out of it. What the part of the process of going through the planning process is that you have then access to 50% funding through the Stormwater Management Authority for any projects that do come from the plan. As we are, I mean, we've progressed a long way through this program. It's $150,000 worth of consultancy. Council's footed the bill for that to date. There is $75,000 to get back from the fund once the final plan is approved. So the 75 grand hanging out there yet to be claimed, but we've got to get to the point of completing the plan before we can do that. But again, any projects that come out of the plan would have to be approved by council for funding, and we'd be looking for joint funding from the board to progress those projects.
All right. Any further comments? I can put that to the vote. All those in favour? Against? That is carried. Right, next one, Peter.
Is the infrastructure progress report. There's a bit in there. Are there any questions?
Councillor Brown.
Yeah, look, I just noticed down the bottom of the report, council's applied for funding for Eyre Street, and we've certainly made no. I mean, there's been no budget allocation, and I mean, an application for Places for People funding requires a 50-50 commitment from council, and I just can't quite understand why staff have gone off and put in an application for grant funding for Places for People when council hasn't made a determination to do that and allocated any budget for the matching funding. We haven't even got an, as far as I know, I haven't seen a community consultation agreed scope of works or plan or anything at all for the Eyre Street, let alone, I mean, I'm not saying we won't commit money to it. I said quite clearly we would, but we haven't done it yet. And to apply for grant funding, basically, is staff making a decision on behalf of council, which is not the way the process works.
Peter?
Yeah, certainly the application makes it clear that council haven't committed funds to the project yet.
Then why would you apply? You're not going to get it. You're not going to get a grant of money if you haven't got matching funding from council. I mean, that'd be one of the criteria, or it always was for Places for People, that it be 50-50 match from council. So if there's no money, it seems like a pointless exercise in council staff time.
Comments, please. Peter, Colin?
We received, I was just trying to think where it came from. I think we received correspondence from the JDA or members of the JDA requesting that an application be made to try and expedite the project, and it was felt that to show good faith to the community that we would endeavour to do something to, regardless of the likely outcome of that being successful or not, to get something in for that grant round that was extended out.
All right, someone's got a vicious dog somewhere, so got
Yeah.
that one.
Dennis,
Colin?
can I just get James in here now, just to make sure that there was a comment made? Has the application guidelines changed? Does council still need a 50-50 commitment?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Colin. As far as I'm aware, the application guidelines have not changed. It's still a 50-50 matching funding for such an application. Obviously wasn't involved in this one. I know there was a level of feedback that had come through a survey, but as far as I've seen, it's the same process as what's been done with previous Places for People funding, which has occurred many years ago at Jamestown, then at Georgetown, Gladstone and Laura.
All right, thank you.
All right, what do you want to do with this one? Any comment?
There's not much we can do. It's been made, but I'm just pointing out the process, and there is a process, and it should be adhered to.
Yeah, that's understandable. Councillor Pollard.
Yeah, that's the end of that one. I've got another one for Peter. I see that the NEO, our friends NEO, are back again doing some work here at the park, on the park surrounds. They're up to the normal standard. They've run into the fence and bent that. I hope that's going to be fixed. But I just query, and I think the Mayor brought it up earlier, the timing of all this, and more specifically the one at the park. If we'd have been having an Anzac Day service on Saturday, we would have had partially completed surface to have it on. And I know that next year it will be better. But when I look back and see that the patrol grading in November, December was minimal, I'm not too sure why we aren't utilising that plant and equipment doing these jobs in that period of time, thus making sure, well, eliminating the use of contractors. Peter, I'd like your comments on it, please.
Well, the works were not designed in that November time. They were designed, and the works was completed in about, well, just prior to Christmas, and went out for pricing just prior to Christmas, closed in late January. The timing, the key issue you're talking about there is the timing of the works, which relates to the design period, and the the sense that I get is that councillors are not satisfied with the construction periods, which comes back to the design periods, which says we've got to get our designs done sooner to be able to get the works done sooner.
Yeah, okay, I accept that, and provided it's realised, because I reckon that particularly the southern side of that park has been on the list to be done for at least 6 years. And we've decided to do it this time round, which is good. I appreciate it being done, it's great. But it's we should be looking at better utilising our staff and equipment in these projects. I mean, our guys could have done that, not a problem. They haven't used anything fancy. They have got and I hope that's not on an hourly job. The first day we had a piece of plant sit there, 2 blokes looked at it for 2 days, one day, and then they got stuck into it. It got about 2/3 the way, their little digger thing, and it started smoking like hell. So they sat around and looked at it for a couple of hours and off it went again. You know, it's been a bit of a circus, and they are a bit of a circus. Now on Monday, which was yesterday, I don't know where these guys come from, but you know, nothing moved until midday. So I hope we're not doing it on an hourly rate.
The works are competitively priced.
It was quoted as a job, was it?
That's
job.
correct.
Okay, well, it's their problem, not ours, except for the fence.
I presume, Councillor Pollard, you monitor that, and if it's not fixed, you'll let someone know.
I do monitor it daily, and it's that they wouldn't even be aware that they've done it. So there we go.
All right. Any further questions? If not, Paul, are we up to scratch? We don't have to note that report, or we all good?
You've got to note it. You've got to move a motion for a noting.
Yep, that's right. Someone prepared to do that? Councillor Scarman, Councillor Pollard. All those in favour? Against? That is carried. All right, no further questions to Peter. Will we have Peter back later on in confidential? All right, moving on. Corporate Services Report. Someone like to, Councillor Scarman, Councillor Webb. All those in favour? Against? That is carried. Thanks, David.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Okay, the first report is an information item. It relates to the draft valuations we've received from the Valuer General. It's really just to tell council about what these valuations may cause in terms of rating. So we get the report each year, normally in March timeframe. It allows us a chance to consider what's in there, ask them to revisit problems that the rates staff find in the report. But particularly, we like to see that the valuations are quite consistent between residential and primary production being our major areas that we rate on. We've certainly noted in this report that there's a lot of variation, particularly in the residential towns. And we've come across this in the past where if some towns have had a different valuation trend to the rest, it does cause us some problems when we go to raise the rates. The fact that all of the urban areas have the same rate in the dollar. So it won't provide an even rate change to the urban areas. So that is what we are up for this year. I can't see through our discussions with them that any of that is going to change. They've clearly decided that some towns have had a dip, and that fair enough. But for other towns, they haven't treated them the same. Laura is an example that they've decided that Laura's urban valuations have remained unchanged essentially, whereas Jamestown has dropped almost 5% and Gladstone 9%. So that's going to cause some problems.
David.
Sorry, any questions to David on that one? Councillor Brown?
David, I suppose it's just pointing out the obvious, but given that Jamestown and the size of it, so Jamestown's a significant part of that revenue base, and it's going to have a fair impact on those other smaller towns, isn't it? Like, it's significant impact, really, isn't it? When you drop the value of probably 50% of the properties by 5%.
Yeah, certainly. I've tried to just give a broad example of what it could do. It's until we start doing some modelling, we probably won't know exactly. But the example I gave there was that, so if we've got a 2.6% rise in the current long-term plan, Laura and Spalding are the towns that haven't really had a change, so they could potentially have double that rise. So, for example, 5%. Jamestown could stay at the 0 as sort of the balance of all the others, and so then Gladstone, with its 9% decrease, could end up with, for example, a negative 4% overall. So that's sort of the rough idea of what could happen, but very much just a guess at this stage.
All right, thanks, David. Any further questions on that report, please? On that one? If not, moving on, David. Thank you.
The second report is just the normal monthly financial information, and which includes department activities, just stuff going on within the department over the last month. So unless there's any questions.
Councillor Brown.
The budget review, that's next meeting, is it, David? The quarterly budget review?
That is the current intent, yes.
Okay, no, that's fine.
Councillor Pollard.
Have we had any, has our notice gone out about the rates and what's the other one, rents and what have you, about us being able to defer them?
Yes, so the order has been placed with our rate printers. So as part of sending out the fourth quarter notices, that flyer is with them, and that, as far as I'm aware, that job is underway. I imagine it will take a handful of days to leave them from now.
Through Mr. Mayor, that information is already placed on the website. A bit of a media release, and the application form is on the website already.
Thank you.
So the original question was, has there been any reaction to it? Because it went out as a media release, and I know it was only recently, but has there been any reaction as yet?
David?
So the application for deferral went on the website yesterday. I haven't heard of any responses as yet.
That's okay. I thought it was a couple of days ago, but that's all right.
Councillor Robertson. You're muted, Merv.
Muted with an N.
How's that? Do you hear me now?
Better.
Sorry. In the trust deposits, I noticed that Flinders Mobile Library has $307,000 in there. I mean, they'd buy a pretty decent truck for that. What's the rest of the money for?
James.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You would be amazed how much a library truck does actually cost, and obviously, if there's work being undertaken at the moment by the staff to look at various options for a truck replacement and timing, etc. Part of that as well would involve, if we did purchase it, obviously one part of it is if you want to purchase it and don't want to borrow, do you want to drain the account to zero, or do you want to have some residual funds sitting in there to go towards other items, whether they be other assets you'll need for staff, etc., such as computers, desks, chairs, and other things? And do you start with a residual to go towards the following truck? But that's certainly being reviewed at the moment, but you will be surprised how expensive that specific item might cost.
Thanks, James. Denise?
I'm on that particular group, and just from the conversations we have there, it's part truck, but it's also about fitting it out to make it fit for purpose, like for people to be in and out of it, and those sorts of things. So like it's an expensive item, a very expensive item. So please leave the money alone.
Any further questions to David? Thanks for that input. David, I've just got one question on the South Terrace solar gazebo that was put up has been pulled down. What's happening there?
Sure, I will tell you what I know. From what I understood, we built all those structures after consulting on site. That's probably all I need to say about that. But I understand that there was some design changes with the storage extension at that site, which then resulted in the structure being in the wrong place. So hence it has to be moved slightly now.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions on David's report? If not, thank you. James, corporate and community, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Apologies for the layout of this report, in that I normally always have the decision items first, but just a couple of mitigating circumstances made this a bit different. So just obviously the first one is funding submission, of which you're all well aware of that particular one. The second is the activity report. Just for members' information on that, the Hornsdale Wind Farm Energy Efficiency Fund closed last week, and typically it was oversubscribed, but we'll work through that with the panel and get some notifications out after the panel meets and forms recommendations for funding allocations. But it was heartening to see a lot of people are again looking very hard at trying to reduce the cost for their organisation, which is very good. Just to further go into item 13.2.3 with the Star Club update, you'll see there's a notification out there that what was titled the South Australian Government's Grassroots Football, Cricket and Netball Facility Program. It's obviously, which councillors are now aware, there's just been recent funding announcements. They opened a further round of that without much warning at the start of this month with a 4-week application period, which you'll see there's some discussion already in the community with regard to sourcing some funding there for particular projects. But that's one that certainly, that's probably likely to be more common practice when there are stimulus type funds around. They tend to give us not a lot of notice, so we're trying to tell groups to basically get your ducks lined up, and if there's opportunities there and you're more organised than perhaps someone else down the road, you may be more likely to get funded. So that one closes the end of this month. Then we'll just roll through to, following on from that, item 13.2.4.
Hang on, James, just for a minute. Councillor Brown wants to make a comment.
I was just looking at that, and I see there is enough in the existing budget, is there, for that?
For what one, Councillor Brown, for 13.2.4?
One you're just talking about, like there's enough money in the budget for this stuff you're talking about down further, the grant that you've applied for. Don't worry about it. It doesn't matter. It's
just the one. Sorry, you're talking in relation to the sporting courts?
No, not yet. I'll talk to you in a minute about it. Doesn't matter. No,
oh, okay, that's all right. Sorry, okay, that's fine. So, sorry, we'll start on 13.2.4, which is obviously in your patch, the sporting courts. That would obviously occur in the 2021 budget.
Yeah.
A request has come through from the Spalding Sports Association. They're seeking to make an application for funding to the grassroots football, cricket and netball facility program. This is the designs which council would be familiar with going forward during the drought stimulus program. And they've put a request forth to seek to see whether council may allocate the earthworks component of that project, which I've listed there. They've got an external quote from the local contractor down there, the Clare Quarry, who's based at Spalding, and it would, I guess, citing that they're seeking to try and accumulate the 50% worth of funding so that they can make an application to the state government for that equivalent amount.
All right. Thanks for that. You've got a comment, Councillor Brown?
I'll move the recommendation. This is what we've done in every other sporting facility within the council area. We always support the sub-base work on these projects. So I'll just move the recommendation.
Second by Councillor Robertson, I guess.
That's correct, yes.
Yeah. Just a question. Clare Quarry going to be doing the work and not Northern Areas Council? Is that correct?
That would be to be determined. Is my thoughts, Mr. Mayor?
That would be my view too. That the council would do it if we could.
Peter, you got a comment on that? Just on costing, or you haven't up to speed with what it is?
I haven't had a look at the details. I'm sure the values is adequate.
All right, thank you. Any other questions on that? If not, all those in favour? Yeah, I've got them all. Carried, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just the other item which is sitting there was it's come forth at a later date, which is a late item. If council chooses to accept that.
CEO and myself spoke last night, and I'm prepared to accept this, given the timing. Just probably, Colin, we'll probably be having a meeting, budget meeting, maybe next week. So
yeah,
I'll let you handle that, Colin, if you can fill us in with the details there.
So, Mr. Mayor, yeah, for a late item to be accepted, the council have to accept as a motion to accept the late item in the first place. So that's the first part of the process. If someone wants to move and second that.
I'll move that.
Councillor Higgins.
Pollard Higgins, yep.
All those in favour? Against? That is carried. Thank you. Thanks, Colin.
I'll let Jane finish the report, then I'll talk about the budget after that.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just in relation to, again, discussing some of these grant programs and how they seem to be operating, they seem to be opening up with very little timing to get applications forward. The reason this one's come forward as a late item is because the closure date for an application is the 11th of May, which is before the next council meeting, so we won't be able to necessarily go through a robust discussion as we would for a lot of them that tend to have, 3-month period. But just in relation to this, the Regional Growth Fund is from the South Australian Government, and it's for, it tends to be for projects that encourage economic outcomes, which you'll see some details there. There's a couple of different streams there. The one that has served councils similar to us in the past has been the competitive grant, so to speak, is where they've looked to allocate funding to particular projects which have assisted business development. As is the case with many funding applications, they are allocated on a dollar for dollar basis. So any funding which council would request, it will need to match, and that's from a minimum of $50,000 up to a maximum of $2 million. There's a couple of, as you'll see, there's details there about how these projects are assessed with a primary set of criteria for assessment. And I guess if there's a tiebreaker required, so to speak, there's a secondary set of assessment criteria. This is not specifically open to councils. It's also open to other groups and other industries. But primarily, if they do, they tend to be, it's suggested to go forward as a group. I think there's been co-ops and the likes in the Riverland that have been successful. Fishing conglomerates, so to speak. Some of those have been heavily on a strategic and regional basis. Some of the types of projects that have happened in other communities have been some significant tourism stuff, as in Gawler and the Barossa Council have done a joint application to extend some cycling trails out there for their tourism. There's been Port Augusta have done some more work around their CBD, which, I mean, it has been raised. There could be potential for Eyre Street. Obviously, there'd be some further discussion that would have to be undertaken there. And some other places have had infrastructure upgrades in terms of water and energy, as in power augmentation is something that's come up before. And I know Alan's raised water supply for particular areas, which I know some councillors have commented heavily on that. I see you waving your hand there, Councillor Brown.
I'm adjusting my glasses.
Those types of projects that may well be eligible, albeit they are required to be matched on a dollar-for-dollar basis. So I guess what we're looking to do would be, this is for councillors' information. We'll work as management very hard to try and identify particular projects, and in order to put an application forward, if council so wished, it would require approval at what will likely have to be a special meeting because of the timing.
Thank you, James. Colin?
Just to finish off with what James is saying now, what we're looking at in the budget process is either a budget workshop or a special meeting either Tuesday or Wednesday next week, depending on elected members' availability. Either night will suit us as management. You just need to let me know. But with James talking about that funding needing a special meeting, we could turn the budget workshop into a special meeting if council chooses to and wants to go down that direction.
We've just got a couple of comments. Councillor Scarman, then Councillor Brown.
You're muted, Sue.
Yep. What are we able to use projects that are already in our budget to pick up some of this? Are there items in the budget that we could put forward and we could gain half of the funds that we've got allocated in the budget to do the project that we've already approved? You know, whether it be footpaths or, yeah, I don't know. I mean, that was just something that came to mind.
James?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Sorry, Councillor Brown.
No, I'll get James to comment on that one first, please.
All right, no worries.
Yeah. Primarily, the answer is they haven't ruled it out, but they've suggested it is not recommended. The work would need to be, in order for the job creation, we would be unable to carry out the work ourselves as a council, and they're suggesting if it's work you've already basically lined up to do, or you've allocated funding towards, it would not be looked particularly favourable upon. I guess what they're looking at is, will this funding enable work to be done that would not be able to occur otherwise and have the added bonus of an economic outcome?
Thanks, James. Ben?
Look, I was thinking I thought about this, a project, I suppose, that would go towards the Eyre Street project, but not determine anything. And that would be, and I'm not sure James would know the answer to this probably, but could we apply for this to underground all the power in Eyre Street, so that then when you go and do the renewal or the project to upgrade it, all the power's already been done as a separate project, and to underground the power in the main street? Is that possible, James, or not?
I won't rule it out. We'll just word it that way. I'd have to delve into that with a bit more detail. It could potentially be able to occur, but I'd have to look into whether one that's able to happen. And there's also alternate funding called PLEC funding, which is I think it's Power Line something committee funding, but that could be researched. That's for sure.
Peter, I think you'll have a comment there on that. There was a thing come out from the LGA regarding underground power lines. Peter, you got a comment there?
Certainly, and James is right with regard to the PLEC funding. There is specific funding available for undergrounding of power. At this stage, the indications are, however, for the Eyre Street project, that it's not strongly supported, the undergrounding of power. And every dollar you put into undergrounding of power, you haven't got available for other elements of the project. So probably, you know, I would caution any other funding other than PLEC for that, and too early to say whether undergrounding is going to be a component of the Eyre Street project either.
Councillor Brown, sorry, another comment?
Well, yeah, what I was wondering, I suppose, is could we apply to this? I knew there was another pool of funding for undergrounding power, but could we apply to this to then leverage the other grant funding? I don't know whether that's appropriate or not, but I'm just wondering, is that possible, James?
To answer that, Councillor Brown, off the top of my head, I do not know, but I can find out if council so wishes to research that.
Councillor Pollard.
And I'm out. No comment.
Dennis, up to you.
You're frozen, Dennis.
Frozen.
He's frozen.
It's frozen, all right.
He's frozen. Oh, good. We can go and have a BB, a piss break.
So, someone like to move that resume normal session? Councillor Pollard, Councillor Webb, all those in favour? Against? That is carried. Sorry. James, did we finish your report?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
Pretty much, yes. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If councillors were satisfied with that explanation.
It was just
Right. Any further questions to James? If not, thank you. Chief Executive Officer's report. Someone like to move to receive that, please? Councillor Scarman, Councillor Pollard. All those in favour? Against? That is carried. Thanks, Colin.
the first one is just information for the confidential minutes. That was
Yep.
all. The second one is more about COVID-19 information, where the government, Office of Local Government, have put in through through one of the Commissioner's declarations that council officers, the council does not need to go to public consultation in this period for any of the budget meetings or any other consultation includes the public. So this policy that's that there amends that that decision by the Commissioner. So everything in red in that policy, that's what's new. Basically, it just says about public meetings and principal offices that you can close without the SA Health Act. When they talk about officers, it's only the principal officer, it's no other officers. We have no indication at this stage that we want to close or modify the hours of the principal office. So it's just a general thing that you can continue with your budget process, but you don't have to go to the public meeting, but you still have to go to the public for consultation via website or Facebook and stuff like that.
Councillor Webb, then Councillor Robertson.
In section D, just in my reading very quickly at 1 o'clock this morning, there seemed to be a double paragraph saying exactly the same thing.
Can I comment on that one, Mr. Mayor? We believe that as well until you read about the last two lines and it changes. I had Jenny go through this for me because I said there was two, but it was in the last line or 2 lines where it changes. There is a difference in the 2 paragraphs.
All right.
Okay.
Any further questions? Councillor Robertson?
Mr Mayor, I'll move the recommendation.
Thank you. That's been moved by Councillor Robertson, seconded by Councillor Pollard. Any further comments? If not, all those in favour? Against? That is carried. Thank you. Right.
Mr Mayor, the next one is about the letter from the Gladstone Community Development and Tourism Association regarding the Gladstone Kindy. Just to put it in a bit of perspective, the way I've written this recommendation is about that council who wants to have an asset rationalisation as part of their strategic plan and not take on any more assets. But I think we should support the association in getting that building. So if they could put it in their own name, we could do a letter of support. Ask for questions from there.
Councillor Webb?
Yes, the letter that was actually sent to council was not the original one that I cited, which had more detail in it. That was just a follow-up via the secretary. I have asked for the copy of that letter to be sent to me to forward on, but that hasn't eventuated this morning. GCDTA has always been in favour of looking after the asset themselves. We were only asking for council support for the assets to be consolidated for us to manage.
All right, thank you.
Can I just ask a question to Councillor Webb, Mr Mayor?
Yes,
when you say the development board to look to manage, is that putting it in their name at the same time, but?
Well, we already have the management of the old high school, and we felt that the other buildings should be included in that asset so that it was consolidated. And we already have a memorandum of understanding, although our chairperson calls it a contract. And, you know, we would take over looking after it because we're already handling maintenance.
Okay. Further comments or questions? Councillor Pollard?
So my understanding of what you're saying, Kathy, is that this fits the bill of what you want to do. The motion that's there fits the bill of what you want to do.
Yes, the letter of support does fit the bill.
Yeah.
And it's just a matter of how it gets worded for the memorandum of understanding. But obviously, via what Colin says, the council itself will not put forward. The GCDTA has to do all the paperwork and running around.
Yes. Yeah, that's how
Councillor Brown, then Councillor Scarman, please.
My query, and I'm just trying to remember, but is the rest of the high school under the care and control of council or not?
Apparently it is.
So what you're asking for this is to be consolidated under the care and control of council. So then it becomes like, for instance, if a future committee walked away and said, we're not interested in it, it's assets that are under the care and control of council that council has a liability to look after.
Well, I think
would that be correct? And I'm probably asking staff that, not you, Kathy.
Through you, Mr Mayor, yes, that is, the high school is under our care and control. And if the GDCA defaulted on their memorandum of understanding, council would take over the asset and have all the liabilities attached to it.
Which is not what we're trying to achieve in our strategic plan. We're trying to rationalise assets that don't have a use to the broader community.
I can understand that, and if complete clarification was put into the memorandum of understanding, I think that would make it perfectly clear to both sides.
Councillor Scarman and Councillor Pollard.
They're asking for consolidation. We're asking that we don't take on any more assets. Is there any way the GCDTA can take over ownership of both of these buildings?
Mayor, do you want me to comment on that?
Yes, please, Colin.
The high school's under basically a care and control agreement with the Crown, and then there's a memorandum of understanding with us and the GCTA. The only way that we could put the two together is for council to apply under care and control from the Crown, and then alter the memorandum of understanding that GCC have already got, so that they can look after both parts. But you're still then putting both parts under council asset if the Gladstone Development Association default. So we'd have the liability then.
So how do we go forward with the kindergarten? We don't buy it, we don't take any part of it, so they can't consolidate the two properties into one. It would have to be two separate agreements.
The only way you could do that is make application to the Crown to push that asset onto the GCDA. Normally they don't do that with private associations, because then they charge a market value for the business. And the latest one we've gone through like this is the Georgetown School. We decided not to go down to that track as well.
Right. Okay, Councillor Pollard, you have a comment?
Well, I've just covered that. And Colin, what you're saying is that we can't hive that off to them because the Crown will want to sell it at...
That's the understanding I have at the moment. We'd have to check that a bit further, but that's what they've done over the number of years, yes.
Well, I wonder if that could be checked, because that makes a lot of sense. It solves our problem, it solves their problem.
Just comment on that the issue of asset rationalisation, if they default, you still own the building down the track. You pick up the liabilities in.
But if instead of the council owning it, then they own it, or whatever the term is under Crown, the Crown thing, whatever you can do, control or whatever, then if they're the sole owners or controllers of that whole complex, and council has nothing to do with it, does it come back to us because it's Crown land, or does it go back to the Crown?
Well, if we had control of it, should go back to the Crown.
That's
Colin,
yeah.
Colin,
comment first, and then Ben, please.
The care and control at the moment with the high school is with council, not the GCDTA, right? Correct. So if you want to consolidate the two, you've either got to let go of the high school and put it to the GCTA, or you accept the kindergarten into that agreement, right?
Correct.
Either way, there is some paperwork we have to get signed off by the Crown, but the Crown don't like doing it with private industry normally. They prefer councils to have it.
Well, you said that's what they normally do. Not worth negotiating, do you don't think?
I could ask some more questions, but I worked down the line that in the strategic plan, council wanted to rationalise assets. So
correct.
We prefer the GCTA to take it in their own right and then do a letter of support for them.
I would prefer them to take it in both, take that plus the other, plus the high school.
Yep, I can check that.
Councillor,
I was next.
Crown, then Councillor Webb, please.
My understanding is that it's under the care and control of council. Now, David would be able to answer this, I think. Is it on our asset register, and are we paying the insurance on it? And we would be then picking up the insurance on any other part that transfers to the care and control of council. It's been my understanding for a long time that the government won't transfer care and control of Crown property to anyone other than, they can transfer it to local government because they control local government with an act of parliament. They don't control other incorporated associations as such, and my understanding is they'd be very unlikely to transfer any Crown asset to an incorporated association other than at market value. But my original question is, are we paying the insurance on these things? And if we acquire more, will we be paying more insurance?
David?
Sorry, would actually have to look up the schedules and confirm all that. So I haven't got that handy.
Sorry, David.
Yeah. As I understand it at the moment, council does pay the insurance, but the association is willing to take that over. Can we look into perhaps Crown on the history and environment, heritage side of it, whether the association would stand a chance of acquiring it on that basis?
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, I can make the phone calls depending on what council direction is.
All right, what would you like to do?
Explore the avenues more.
All right, Councillor Scarman, your comment?
I was just going to suggest that we find out more and bring it back when we have more information.
Well, I'll move a procedural motion that it lay on the table then.
Happy with that. Second, Councillor Higgins, I guess. Is that the way forward, Colin?
Yeah, that's fine. It allows me to get some more information, and then we've got the information. We just bring it from the table back to the meeting.
Thank you. All those in favour? Against? That is carried. Thank you. Right. Next one, Colin, the action list. Any comments or questions? All silent. No further questions to Colin. We'll move on to members' reports. I guess you've all put stuff in. Anyone like to comment further on their reports? All silent? Yeah, that's unusual.
Mr. Mayor.
We've all been self-isolating.
Councillor Robertson?
All I was going to comment was that it's been very quiet, no meetings, and I've got nothing to comment on.
Yep. Councillor Webb?
Yes, the GCDTA in their wisdom ended up doing a paper meeting. So they sent out an agenda with some comments everybody sent in. So I've had no response as to how everybody voted. Slow process.
I think the only ones I like to comment on is I've had several Zoom meetings, hookups with LGA, that sort of thing, but that's pretty much been reported. That should be all good. Just trying to get my other device connected, but I think that's going to work. All right. If there's nothing else, we will move on to the meetings.
Sorry, can I just speak, please? I didn't know where I sent an email to people yesterday afternoon around the connection between strategic plan and budget, and I thought it was going to come through in general business, but we're down in delegates report, so I'm happy to do it there. I don't mind how this works.
We will get to general business after the confidential stuff, Denise.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we'll do the confidential, then we'll go back to general business.
All right. It's not in the order on the agenda.
Yep, so that's the order of the meeting. So if there's nothing, we will move into confidence. Would someone like to move that we go into confidence, please? Councillor Webb, Councillor Pollard. All those in favour? Against? That is carried.
Glenville, get your name in there.
Right. So you recording?
Yep, recording.
So would someone like to move now that we go into confidence for the next item, please? Councillor Moore, Councillor Pomeranke. All those in favour? Against? That is carried.
Right.
Recording.
Recording's now back on.
the next one is the tender for the truck. Someone prepared to move the go into confidence, please. Councillor Pomeranke, Councillor Webb, all those in favour? Against? That is carried. Recording.
Recording resumed.
Right. Next one is the tender for bridge works. Someone like to move the go into camera, please. Councillor Pomeranke.
I think the next one's tender for desludging. Oh no, they're not in the right order. Well done. It's all right, sorry.
So that was moved by Councillor. Oh, we're clear on that one. All those in favour?
Didn't get a second. Didn't get a second. Sorry. It was Pomeranke, then
Councillor Higgins.
Higgins. Okay. Okay.
Right. Bridge work.
Recording. Yep.
Yeah. The next one is for the desludging. So would someone like to move it go into camera, please? Councillor Scarman, Councillor Pomeranke, all those in favour? Against? That is carried. Right.
Can I just make a point, Dennis? Do we need to do that hot mix report?
So, someone prepared, Councillor Pollard, you're prepared to move that it be noted?
Be noted. Yep.
Seconded, Councillor Moore. All those in favour?
Sorry, Dennis.
Sorry. Yep.
Where are you up to? We're not in confidence yet for this one. You haven't
moved in. So
that's what I was doing, Dennis. I'll keep you on the right track.
Righto. Move Councillor Pollard, seconded Councillor Pomeranke. All those in favour? Against? Right, that's carried. Sorry.
Let me put right. You're out. You're recording again now.
Now, 1617 Georgetown Wind Farm transmission line update. Someone like to move? We go into camera, please. Councillor Pollard, Councillor Higgins, all those in favour? Against? That is carried.
Right.
Kept in confidence till contracts are signed. Does that? Yes, that still do that. Yeah. All those in favour? Someone like to move that, please? So, recording's back on.
Yes.
Now, there'll be no more confidential items. General business, please.
I've got one in a minute.
Well, now, please.
All right. Look, there's an issue with the solar for the swimming pools, where there's a little bit of a shortfall in what council's allocated to the various pools and what it's going to cost to do these various solar projects. And predominantly the pools are about young people and being active in the community. And we've got $15,000 sitting in an Opal reserve that was for young people, and it was designed around young people and keeping them active and involved in various things within the community. So using that money to support the swimming pools and get those solar projects done would be a possibility. Now, David might know more about it. I just had a look at this Spalding one, but I know there's a couple of others, but David would know more about them than me. And there's a few $1,000s shortfall in most of them, I think. And we've got $15,000 in that Opal fund that's been sitting there for many years and not doing anyone any good.
Mr. Mayor, can I just make a comment? That Opal fund, I thought, was going to
projectors,
screens to go in the halls.
No.
Projectors.
That was the NatYak funding. That one.
Oh, sorry. Yep.
I'll ask David for a comment, please.
Okay, you got me?
Yep.
We got you, buddy.
Okay, so my recollection back when Opal was putting money into community projects, they did put some money into 2 of the pools with their solar related stuff, but they probably couldn't put as much at that time as they would have liked because they were supporting so many different projects around all the councils involved in Opal. And yes, there is about 15 grand sitting in that Opal reserve at the moment. In terms of those pools, I think I had an update of James and I have been in contact with the pools to do with that Neon Energy funding. Spalding have already got funding from Neon last year. The other two applied this year. In all cases, the projects do cost a little bit more than either the funding they've had or the maximum funding available in Neon.
All right, thanks, David. Peter, can I just get you to mute your screen, please? Thank you. All right, any further comments?
Well, I'll probably move a motion that we allocate that money to the pools.
Well, you can if you want to, Councillor Brown. Unless there's any comments to the contrary. No, Ben. Councillor Higgins. You're muted. You're muted, Denise.
I'm happy to second that motion.
Can I, Mr. Mayor, can I just understand what the motion is?
We haven't really got it yet. We'll just,
you cannot have a mover and a seconder and then not have a motion.
Councillor Brown,
I move that we allocate the Opal money, the $15,000 Opal money, to the pools. 5,000 to each pool to go towards their solar projects.
Yeah, see that's different.
Solar upgrades.
Colin?
Sorry, that was different to what it was first, I thought was said. You've added 5,000 per pool to that now.
Yeah, that is correct. There was no mention of the funding initially. There was just that it was go to the pools. So, Councillor Brown, you are indicating that you want it for 5,000 for each pool.
Oh, well, there's 15,000 there, and we allocate that to each pool for the solar projects that they're and power conservation they're trying to do. Now, I don't know whether I don't know that the Gladstone and Jamestown project, how much money they need. I think Spalding needs about 3.5, but like there's a bit of work to do on the shed as well that would normally be perhaps seen as council needs to upgrade its shed to hold the panels or whatever, so that if we allocate the whole 5,000, I think it would cover all the costs of doing those power upgrades. But David might want to put a further comment in on that, but that's my understanding of where it sort of is.
Now, we're getting a lot of feedback again. Colin, are you happy with that motion as Councillor Brown indicated?
Through Mr. Mayor, that the second one where he talked about it coming from the Opal Reserve with $5,000 per swimming pool, that's what we've got written down at the moment. Yeah, we're happy with that. Just sometimes the motion goes into words and we're not quite 100% sure what the motion.
So Denise, you seconded that. You're happy with that? And we've got Councillor Scarman. Got a comment, please?
Microphone.
It seems like there's a lot of what ifs and information that we haven't got. Is probably a question to David. What information is been presuming we've got, and what actual information is there? It seems like he's sort of guessing at figures, and I'd just like a bit of clarification. If we can't have that clarification today, can we perhaps put this off till we've got more information?
Thank you, David. You got a comment, please?
Sure. As I mentioned before, we have been involved in helping the swimming pools obtain the quotes they need and helping advise them as well with their solar projects to enable them to apply for the NEON funding. Yes, broadly, they all have a shortfall. What Ben said about Spalding is pretty much on the mark. One of the problems at all the swimming pools is that they have lack of available roof space, and so we have to get a little bit inventive about where we can put the solar panels that fits with the needs of the pools. So the pump shed at Spalding does need a bit of timber work to strengthen it to allow the panels to be fitted on there. The Jamestown pool, again, the pump shed is being looked at as the preferred option, and there is a solution there to put a second roof structure over the really old pump shed that's there now, which would enable in time that to be turned into a new shed as the old pump shed is removed from underneath, but allows the project to proceed in the short term. And with Gladstone, I think it's just a shortfall of funds in general to get the project over the line.
Sue,
Is
comment,
the
please.
shortfall going to be equal over 3 for us to divide it, like Ben said, 5,000 per pool, or would it be better to put 7,000 towards Spalding and 2,000 to Gladstone because they're further advanced and don't have as much of a shortfall?
Okay, so I can say that the estimates we have, the Jamestown shortfall is about 5,000 to build this second roof over the existing pump shed. Spalding, it's probably 1,000 to 1,500 for that timber work, and then another 3,000-ish for the quote shortfall. All quotes though have to be, you get a quote for the grant submission, but then when you come to actually do the project 6 months later, it might vary a little bit anyway. So it is about 5 for those 2 pools. I think in the case of Gladstone, it's about them rounding up the shortfall from their community groups that they get it from, such as the op shop and the Lions. So if they had extra funds in the kitty, then they would just either get less from them or redirect their commitments to something else.
All right. I think here we're not going to get the dollars just right, but if it's divided up between each pool, I think in the end of the day we'll achieve the result that we require. So I think it's probably not that bad. So any further comments? So are you clear with what you're voting on? 5,000 for each pool. All right. You're happy with that, Colin? You've got that in the motion.
Yes, yes, we're okay.
Okay. Right. All those in favour? Against? That is carried. Thank you. Further general business? Councillor Higgins first, then Councillor Robertson.
Denise, you switched off.
Yep. It tells me. It tells me. So yesterday, people, I sent an email about the connection I see between strategic plan and the budget. And I've not got a major proposal for you. I guess what I'm saying is that when we go back and look at the strategic plan, a couple of the goals aren't coming up much in any of the work that we're doing on council at the moment. And so I'm looking for us to be thinking about that so that when we come to do the budget conversations, when David presents a draft budget, that we can be saying, where's the money for? It's that sort of, like, I don't think it's up to me, and I'm happy to do this on your behalf if you want me to, but I think it would be good if a number of us actually thought about, so let's, you know, the desirable place to live and visit, where's the work around that coming through what we're doing in council at the moment? And it's probably not there because we don't have a budget, we don't have budget lines for it. And so it's really difficult to work on the strategic plan, enact the strategic plan if we don't actually budget for it. And I don't necessarily have lots of projects in mind, but the ability to go, actually, that'd be really useful if we put, I don't know, $20,000 somewhere, or, I mean, I don't even know how much, but I'm thinking we need to do something.
Councillor Tyre.
Oh, no, I was just saying, mate, 50.
50. I'm happy with 50.
See, we've already spoken about this, and I wrote a document about it earlier in the year. I'm not quite sure how far I sent it, that's all.
I think
Sorry?
maybe. We did start a conversation about it, yes.
Yes, we did. And I'm not too sure how far it went, but she's quite right. It should be, and it's difficult without a plan because to allocate some funds, but there should be funds there that we can use if something crops up in this area that we can use.
Yeah.
That's all I'm saying.
So is this something that needs to be mindful when we're doing our budget deliberations, like when we're going through our budgets?
Exactly.
In my view, yes.
Well, I think that's something that when we get to the budget side of it, that's where we can further explore this. Obviously, there's fairly strong support for it, and yeah, when we're doing our budget, we've just got to be mindful of whatever the number might be that you want to put in there. Councillor Brown.
Yeah, look, I'd just like to comment, and I think what Councillor Higgins has raised is quite good. But I think you need to look at some of the stuff we do too. Like, I mean, just what we've done with the upgrades to the pools through this stimulus money we've had. I mean, that's made will, by the time we get them all finished, will have made a huge impact on those community assets. I mean, sometimes we don't give ourselves enough credit for some of the stuff we do, and there's a lot of stuff around the community, you know, projects at ovals. We've just helped fund some stuff at this potentially at the Spalding Oval today with council's help to get that project over the line. We're working on these things all the time, but we perhaps don't put them in the right box sometimes. They cover two areas. That's all I'm saying. I think we need to keep it in mind, but we are also doing it.
I'll just go quickly to Denise and then Councillor Robertson.
Just really quickly, Ben, I agree. There is stuff going on. No, there is stuff going on that fits within this. But when you go back and you look at that particular goal, like the measures are things like increased local population. Like there are things in there that, unless we are really out there and obvious with community and therefore broader community, people aren't necessarily going to know about it. So maybe part of this is about raising awareness and doing some of that as well, so that people go, maybe I will go and live in northern areas, because there's all of these things going on that then adds to all of the other things that we want to do. Like it's that sort of gathering momentum. And I'm not saying we're not doing stuff. Listen to me. I would like for us to be able to work more in that desirable place to live and visit, which then leads to thriving local community, which then it all links in together. I'm finished.
Right, Councillor Robertson.
Mr. Mayor, mine's a different subject. If you want to go on to another subject.
Yes.
It was on the radio last week that dealing with Zoom is not secure. Now, we've dealt with a number of confidential items today. Is Colin aware that is the case, that Zoom, anything that's put on Zoom is not secure?
We've had some advice come back to us about Zoom, yes. We're getting told that it is secure enough to hold everything. We don't hold high-level stuff. But the legal advice at the moment is continue with Zoom until something else has happened. Yes, we've had that discussion, yes.
Right, thank you.
Dennis, can I make a comment back on the strategic plan stuff?
Yes, definitely.
Sorry, let's go backwards. What Councillor Higgins is talking about is really real. I've been trying to write a report for the last 3 meetings to bring some information to you, but the COVID-19's just knocked me out the wall. But what I've developed is basically a timeline and a structure for the strategic plan to look at who's responsible for the stuff, who's actually enacting it, and type stuff. I've got in here, other than our normal operational budget, I've gone through at first cut and said there's 8 projects in here that will probably cost me $45,000 to $50,000 to fund to make sure we're doing things, right? Outside our normal thing. I think as part of the budget process, we link the allocations we give in the operational budgets back through this as well. And I think that's going to give you an answer to where raising the awareness of in that. So we probably need to do our budget slightly differently, and we probably need to do information communiques out to the community a lot more often on to raise the awareness stuff. So I think it's an ongoing thing, and what you're starting, I think, is really good, because that's where we need to be in our next step from there. Thank you. That's all I've got to say at the moment.
Right. Thanks for that. No, that's very good. Right, we're still running around general business. Councillor Pollard.
Yeah, I got a couple of things that I tried to ring David about last night. Couldn't get through. Who are who are they? Page 1 of the payments. Professional services, Tonkin and Conquest agreements. Now, have we got an agreement with Tonkins and then they're billing us for it, or what's going on there?
David, do you want to handle that one, or do you want me to talk? David,
Peter. Sorry,
David.
Peter.
David.
Oh, we'll go David first and then Peter.
Sure. So John Diabato is our strategic IT consultant. You may remember he did a report for us 18 months or so ago. John specialises in a range of that sort of stuff, particularly the contract side of things. So he helped us also with our IT support company, and from that relationship, I believe Peter's used him for some of that contract work with Tonkins, which Peter can elaborate on.
Certainly. Yep. So when council resolved to go with Tonkin as the host and Conquest as the provider for our data for asset management, we received 2 draft contracts, one from Conquest, one from Tonkin, around those. Now, the arrangements for these are effectively IT related, not the sort of contracts that I've had a lot to do with in the past. And it was felt that it was prudent to run these by John Diabaldo to read, to have a look at, to see whether council's interests were being appropriately managed through those contracts. And we found to be quite a number of problems with the contracts, which both Conquest and Tonkin had to go back and revise and ensure in that process that council's interests were appropriately managed in terms of who holds the data, who owns the data, what happens if the data is lost, etc., many things. Again, John gave very good service through that process.
Yeah, happy with that. There's another payment there for 21,000 for Stringer. I presume he's a water carter. And I think there was one the previous month. What is going on there? Why are we carting so much water? Peter.
Peter.
Dry season, we've got one truck that's down. We've very shortly be replacing that particular truck. So in the absence of one truck in a dry season, we've been contracting some of our water cartage.
And am I assuming that we're doing roads that are miles away from where there is a water supply?
That's the case in some instances, for sure.
Why are we doing that? Why are we doing stuff that's miles away and requires an extra 21,000 to prop it up?
Well, again, it's not all about the fact that it's a long way away from water sources. It's the fact that we need to have vehicles to be able to cart that water, and at the moment we don't have all the vehicles that going that have contemporarily been in our fleet. So the roads are where they are, and the roads that we've got on the list for construction are also effectively determined by council. So if that's where the need is, that's where we've got to send the trucks.
Thanks, Peter.
Yes. Yeah, that's a self-fulfilling answer, that one.
Oh, just on that, it's very difficult in Peter's situation with water. If you've got road gangs that are out building roads, and well, we all know we've come off a fairly dry period, and we've been getting material from Clare Quarry and other areas, and I think in this situation, I think we're just going to have to. Some of these costs we have to bear them. We can't do much about them, really, unfortunately. Councillor Brown, you're muted.
You're muted.
I thought you'd all be happy with that. But anyway, I suppose I'll just add to that. Like, I mean, as you know, you've done the Ballally East Road. You had we had 2 contract water trucks working on that at some stages, as well as our own. Have we done a look at the cost of that compared to the cost of putting the water on at the quarry where the water is? Because every bit of material I've ever carted out of that quarry is carted out wet. Now, the Highways Department, and it's generally all Highways Department or contractors for the Highways Department that I've carted, and none of them are not switched on with what they do. They do cost analysis of how they do these jobs, and they decide to cart all the material out of there wet because it's cost effective. They don't do it because Russell's potentially making an extra $1 out of it. They do it because it's much cheaper. So how much did we spend on the Ballally East Road in water trucks with our own and contractors versus what it would have cost to have the water put on at the quarry? Now, that's something we should have a look at so that we don't run into these huge costs again. And then, are we actually buying trucks that for a lot of the year we won't need? Because it seems that we've bought more water trucks than we've certainly sold in the time I've been on the council, and we still haven't got enough.
Well,
and the one that, and I haven't quite finished yet, but the one that was reported at the council, now I don't know whether the right truck was indicated, but the one I was told that was in Spalding that was broken down, that the day after we bought that, agreed to buy that water truck, it never stopped moving, but it was parked up until then. So I'm not sure whether that's the right truck or not, but that's a sort of an international sort of truck. But yeah, without knowing the various different numbers, if there's one broken down somewhere, I don't know where it is, because that was the one I was told was broken down, and then I saw it moving all the time.
Well, look, there's a lot in there. All I can do is probably take the question on notice and bring back some information on that. Certain sort of fair bit of information you're asking for there, and not stuff I can respond to off the top of the head.
I fully accept that, but I'm just saying, are we going to have a look?
Yeah. I had done some figures on water cartage. Certainly, we're keeping more complete records of where we get water, what trucks we're using, etc., than I've been able to access from the past. So we are providing a better understanding of where we're getting water from, how much is going to which areas and things like that. We have costs that we can look at from previous years, but not the other information that goes with that. So certainly we will be doing more, and that's why we're gathering that additional information so that we are able to better understand our water needs and our water costs and to minimise them as much as possible.
Well, hopefully we can get a decent couple of wet seasons so we don't need as much water, because everything is been so dry. So fair enough. Right.
Councillor Pollard.
Public lighting, David. How many different organisations supply public lighting? I see there's two payments in there, one to SA Power Networks and one to a crowd called Infogen.
Okay. So Infogen are the new preferred, sorry, just dropped out for a sec, I think. Infogen are the new preferred contractor under the LG procurement street lighting tender. It was Origin up until the end of December. So that's now changed to Infogen. And I think there's a base fee that we do pay SA Power as well. So it's basically roughly the level it's always been. There's no providers, no new charges. The Infogen contract is obviously a little bit less than what the Origin one used to be. So,
all right. So SA Power Networks, we pay a rental on the lights and what have you, basically, and the Infogen we pay for the power we use.
Usage, yep. I think that's pretty much it. Nothing's really changed from what it's always been.
Okay.
All right, further general business, please. Right. That's it. Section 41 committees, no reports there. Have councillors got anything else they would like to report on the delegates report? I think we've spoken to that briefly before. So has anyone got anything they want to comment on, please? No?
No, we've all been socially isolating and haven't been to any meetings.
Councillor Scarman?
The only thing I have, the budget workshop on Tuesday, did we want to make that a special meeting so that if there's items in the budget that would fit that, the Regional Growth Fund opportunities?
Yes, that's an opportunity. Colin, comment please.
We can call it either way. We could do it as a special meeting, and if we have information, yes, we raise it. But when we get to the budget part, we could just defer standing orders and just go into a workshop situation anyway. So by calling it a special meeting, it's probably that gives us both options to do it that way.
Yep.
And the way I'm getting it from that, what Sue said, you prefer Tuesday night to do it?
That's fine by me.
No one's got a life at the moment.
All right, we'll go for Tuesday night, 7 p.m. budget workshop, special meeting with the budget. I'll send something out. Send out something out for you.
Just let me check the TV timetable before.
Look, I'd already looked after you. I thought you had darts still on, so I didn't go Wednesday night.
Good man.
All right. If there's nothing else, I'll be at the special meeting, but I'll be taking leave of absence as of the 2nd of May to the 9th, probably of June. Hopefully I'll be back on track again by then, but I'll review that. If my health doesn't allow me to, well, I'll probably have to take some more time out. So that's where we're at. We've got through the meeting. Thanks for today. I'm not happy with my technology here. I don't know what's going on, but we survived. So has anyone got any quick comments on how they thought the meeting went?
Yeah, I think it's fine. I put mine onto my laptop today to see people's faces. I prefer that. Meant that I could have my large iPad sitting there and easier to access all the other bits. So Anna helped me set that up yesterday. So if people are looking for some support in that, she was great about that.
Yeah, we'll just...
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, same here.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, if I could just make one suggestion. Paula and I have looked at this before, and Paul has raised it again this morning, that when we do recording, it'd probably be better if we actually change the names that come up on the screen to your Councillor Leon Pollard, Councillor Denise Higgins, rather than Champ, E&O, Benedict, because it's an official council document, so we can do that here. We think to change it. So has anyone got any problems with us doing it? So it makes it look a bit more professional.
No, no.
No, happy with that.
Yourself.
The mayor had a previous problem with his Zoom meetings.
Who did?
Councillor Brown?
Look, if you can change it by all means, but that's my own personal iPad I'm using for the meetings.
No.
So
Yeah, see,
I don't think,
same with me.
I don't think you can change my personal iPad. So
we found something the other day that let us, while the meeting was going on, to do it. So
if you can do it, that's fine.
Oh,
Like,
okay, just let us have a look. See how we go. But we did see something the other day. All right. Okay, thank you. That was all I had, Mayor.
You're correct, Colin, and Paula, you can change, just the host can change the name on the screen, but that's on the screen only for the meeting, and then it goes back to whatever champ or whatever it may be. So it's just, as I'm aware, as you said, Colin, I think you can change that on the host screen. Councillor Pollard, do you have a comment?
They didn't change yours when you were with the River Murray group,
Yes, they did.
did they?
In the end, they did, yes.
You made me change the computer because it kept coming up turd.
And since I sorted it out myself, it's fine. All right.
We're still recording.
Yeah.
Any further comments from Colin or staff?
No, thank you.
Well, thank you everyone for your patience today. We've got through our first official Zoom meeting, and hopefully the way South Australia is going, that maybe we'll be back in our chamber hopefully sooner rather than later. So thank you for your attendance, and I'll declare the meeting closed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Everybody.